Welcome, everyone. You've joined us for this webinar on experiential student learning and LEAD. We are very excited to share with you an ARC case study from the SUNY system. If you're new to ARC, we are a free software platform that gives you a score for the environmental performance of your building. This couldn't be more important than it is today. We are in the decade of climate action, and this is where we can really improve 90% of the building stock worldwide that is in operation and can be higher performing. Very simply, at the core of ARC is a score. You can track scores in 5 categories: energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience. At the center of my screen, you're seeing a score of 76. That is out of 100. Higher scores indicate better performance, and it indicates that your building is performing at a higher level than all other similar buildings worldwide. ARC Score Inc. is the name of our company, and it is a part of the U.S. Green Building Council and the Green Business Certification Inc. family of organizations. It is a technology platform that helps you measure, analyze, and most importantly, score the performance of spaces, buildings, and places. I'm in the company of faculty, students, and university members, so scoring can't be a more fruitful discussion than this audience. What we do in ARC is take in data from various sources. This could be a meter, manually entered, sensors, etc., and create a score which defines leadership. You can track leadership at all levels. ARC for All is our free platform that allows you to enter data. Anyone, anywhere can use ARC to enter data. And really here we're encouraging that first step towards a leadership standard. Once you've entered data in ARC and you've received a score, here's an opportunity to incentivize and encourage better performance through performance certificates. These certificates are available across all 5 categories: energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience. So you can get a certificate at any point in time for any of those 5 categories. And of course, we hope that you will pursue LEED certification, which is a globally recognized leadership standard for green buildings and cities. As you enter data in ARC and get a score, you're on your way towards LEED certification, which requires minimum levels of performance, hence minimum score. And we're going to hear about all of these today from the SUNY team. We also know that the need of the hour is to ensure that our buildings are safe for occupancy. Through this pandemic, the ARC team has been very active and engaged in creating a toolkit to ensure and reflect on the re-entry of spaces. This is called ARC Re-Entry. You can use data to understand how well your building is performing with reoccupancy. You can collect data and feedback from occupants if they feel safe in the building. And last but not the least, we want to ensure there are tangible measurements of air quality to reflect on the best practices that are being implemented in the building. Overall, you can generate a score and, of course, a report on this process, which is iterative throughout the time period you want to use the toolkit. More information is available on arcscore.com/reentry, and it's a free toolkit for everyone. Today, you're going to hear a lot about ARC, a lot about LEED Lab, and most importantly, the amazing ways students and faculty are working together to not just study in LEED buildings, but also learn from them. I want to leave you with 2 resources where you can learn more about ARC, which is on arcscore.com, and of course, LEED Lab, which is available on usgbc.org/education/LEED Lab. So with that, let me invite our first 2 speakers for the day. Mark and Dr. Paul. We're so excited that both of you could join us and share with us the amazing work you're doing at the SUNY system. Mark, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Gautami. Greetings from beautiful upstate New York. Thanks to the fantastic team over at ARC for their support. My thanks to my co-presenters today, including a couple of students you'll hear from later. And thanks to you all for just being participants in this webinar about how we are incorporating ARC into the SUNY Green Building Experiential Learning Collaborative. We hope that you get a lot out of this webinar. So I am Mark Bremmer. I'm the leader of the project, and I'm faculty at the State University of New York, that's SUNY, Polytechnic Institute. My project collaborator, Paul Cravella, who is a faculty at SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, that's ESF. He and I will be sharing with you our experiences using ARC in the classroom for lead building certification projects with students as our project team members. So today you'll be hearing directly from two of our students about their experiences a little bit later on. For your reference, our project website has been updated. It has all kinds of project information, past presentations we've given, course descriptions, syllabi, and even some online course registration links for stuff we're doing now, and much more. So you can find it at sunypoly.edu/GBELC. So be sure to check that out either now or later for your future references. So today you'll hear from our presenters about the following: our project objectives, why we're doing this and our approach, our course prep, development, and delivery, how specifically we incorporate ARC into the classroom and how our students use it, results and feedback from our experiences thus far, our lessons learned, and then you'll hear directly from the students. And we want to acknowledge the rest of our team, and then we'll field questions from the attendees. So the aim of this project is to connect campus green buildings to our curriculum and also to develop the workforce of our students for the future green economy. We believe the students should not just be learning in our green buildings, but also from our green buildings. As faculty, it's our job to develop student skills that they'll need for future workforce. And at the end of our courses, students are able to take LEED Green Associate or Accredited Professional exams, which is a badge of proof of their knowledge and helps them build their resume before they graduate. Students are working alongside also our campus professionals, who we also provide various energy and green building related training, such as LEED AP. Finally, our third goal is to scale our capabilities across our state and beyond. And thanks so much for joining us today. We want to share our lessons with those who might be interested in doing the same thing that we're doing. We also want to build our in-house capacity to monitor indoor air quality, track our performance, and ARC, of course, helps us do all of that. So just a little bit of context. We are a partnership of 3 campuses in the center part of New York State. You can see in the very center, we have Environmental Science and Forestry. That's Paul's campus. And we have SUNY Polytechnic in Utica. That's my campus. And then we have a third partner, SUNY Oneonta, that is in the town of Oneonta in the lower right. We believe that our state university system in particular is primed to benefit from a project like ours because we have a lot of green infrastructure to support it. Since 2004, when an executive order was signed, all state buildings were mandated to be designed to LEED Silver standards. So any campus building constructed in the last 16 years is already a green building, has lots of those green features. Some of them are indeed certified LEED, and they're just primed for our type of approach. We adopted a LEED lab model for our curriculum, which uses course projects to certify existing buildings to the LEED standard. We are fortunate in New York State also to be under leadership that has really ambitious energy efficiency plans, and they've released some roadmaps and plans to achieve that. What we want to do is state goals are to develop 20,000 New York clean energy jobs. There are some bold commitments toward 100% clean electricity from renewable sources, as well as some carbon neutrality goals for our new construction. We believe that one of the most effective ways to learn, to put this into practice, is through experiential learning, project-based learning, and applying those skills in course projects. So that's what we're all about. We know that the health and well-being of building occupants is it's an important feature. It's very timely with the pandemic, and it's a particular focus of LEED and some other green building rating systems such as WELL, Fitwel, others. And we have no lack of focus on this as well in our project. So one final thing, we know LEED buildings address a lot of the environmental impacts of buildings. We have about 40% of total greenhouse gas emissions globally are coming from buildings, and LEED in particular helps us to address those emissions and reduce them. So we adopted this LEED lab model. LEED is, I'm sure most of you are aware, LEED is the most widely used green building rating system in the world, more than 90,000 projects all over in 165 different countries. LEED buildings, of course, save energy, water, resources when it comes to building and operating the buildings. They generate less waste and, of course, support human health. LEED is now in its version 4. So when I refer to LEED v4, that's referring to the latest update. And then, in fact, there is an even newer beta update called 4.1, which we adopted and seamlessly integrates ARC platform into the operations and maintenance certification. And of course, LEED is a point-based system, and the spread is shown here. And you'll see later on some of our projects are showing the scores, and that will be relative to these levels here. Of course, LEED emphasizes the system goals. Climate change and human health account for a majority of the LEED system goals. You can see the points are weighted to be over 50% of the points are in those two categories. And other goals are listed here as well. Not that they're lesser importance, but the LEED scores are weighted as such. So at this point, introduction is done. I'd like to hand off to my co-presenter, Dr. Paul Cravella, ESF.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for the leadership. So for those of you online, Mark came to me with an idea more or less 3.5 years ago or so and said, could we put together essentially a proposal that would allow us to give students the opportunity not just to sit in the classroom and learn about these buildings, but actually to climb all over these buildings, really engage with the material, understand it, and benefit the campus at the same time. I love the idea. There's not much that gets me excited with at my age with teaching, but this was an opportunity that I saw as being priceless. And so when we put together the plan for how we wanted to do this, we wanted to make sure that the students in all of these 3 campuses had the opportunity to experience a course in a different way than they might have otherwise. So what did that look like for us to do that? Well, first off, before the course launched, we had to make sure that the preparations were in place for the students to have a rewarding and useful experience. And what we made sure was that since data was going to be at the heart of the student work, we went ahead and figured out what are the platforms the students are going to use to access the data. So while we all get familiar with platform software for our own responsibilities day to day, Students weren't necessarily used to navigating some of these platforms. And so besides ARC, we have an online platform that we use for accessing energy data for our campus. We wanted to make sure the students experienced working with real data, but did it in a manner that they avoided some of the frustrations that might come from having to learn multiple platforms. So we went ahead and got a hold of the data, put it in an easily accessible form, and then spent time with the students helping them understand what they're looking at. So one of the advantages of working with a platform like ARC is that it is a very visual platform. So when the students were working with the data, very quickly they got to the point where they could look at a bar chart, notice anomalies, and they began to ask questions, missing data, data that didn't match up to their expectations. The students very quickly were able to come up to speed on this. But that was because they weren't looking at spreadsheets with numbers. So it's very important that the advanced preparation be done in terms of getting the data in place. The students learned some simple tools. So they learned some Adobe tools to be able to take areas and length measurements from the plans we shared with them. But for as much effort as we put into the experiential side and making sure that the course played out well by having the data ready for the students to work with, a lot of credit goes to the fact that USGBC has already developed very solid instructional materials. So at the lower left there, you see the manual that essentially became the textbook for the classes that we helped the students deliver. While it wasn't a traditional course and run in a traditional manner from a textbook, the Lead Green Associate manual provided us a great structure and a great reference the students could work back to. And so we were fortunate to be able to spend our time working on the experiential part of the course and lean heavily on the instructional materials that had already been created by USGBC. And with that, if we can go to the next slide. So 3 different campuses, 3 different faculty. How did we make this happen with the unique demands in each location? Well, first, we were fortunate in that USGBC has already piloted approaches where buildings are used for the students to understand the LEED system and developed something they call the LEED Lab model. And so over a dozen campuses now use this, and we had benefited from the opportunity to look at the other experiences those campuses had when they rolled out systems like this. There's platforms that share that. There's examples of the materials. So if you're thinking about trying to step into this direction, recognize that USGBC has good instructional materials, and they also have some very successful training materials from other campuses that have done this. Each of our campuses is different and unique in terms of what we teach. I personally teach in a construction management program, and so this course actually became an alternate program requirement. So we have an introduction to sustainable construction. And what better way to introduce the students to sustainable construction than allow them to take this LEED Lab course here at ESF. So this became a course that our students could take as part of their required courses. We also had a number of other majors. We took it as electives, and we ended up with about 35 students enrolling the first year. SUNY Poly taught the course between programs as well. Mark taught alongside a professor from civil engineering. And the course was also multiply listed between different degree programs, and they taught it as an elective course. Oneonta, I don't know, this was a couple years ago, so maybe they had some foresight, but they decided right from the get-go that they were going to go ahead with an online delivery platform. And so well before any of COVID hit the rest of us, Oneonta developed their courses in an online mode. And so each of the campuses delivered the course in a manner that was appropriate for what they were going to do. Next slide. Okay. So, how did the course actually happen? Day one, the students who had never been outside of the classrooms in this building ended up climbing down into the basement. We walked through electrical rooms. We walked through a number of rooms holding air handling units. They got familiar with the locations where the water and other services entered the building. We climbed all the way to the top of the building, went through and looked at some of the energy recovery ventilators and other HVAC system on the building. The students really needed to understand the building in a very different way than they had in any of their other coursework. And I remember at the end of the very first day of classes, one of the students came up to me and asked, is each class this semester going to be like this? With kind of this quizzical look on their face. And so it wasn't like that for every class, but it definitely was a different program. The way the course rolled out was essentially side by side, 2 lectures, if you will, a week, but lecture is just the term we use for having the students in the same location. One of those times, the students spent engaging and learning the material in what might be a more traditional approach. The other class period was really used for the students to work together on project teams, to present what they had found, to engage with the other stakeholders that they needed to know and understand their roles. And so the students had really each week the opportunity to engage with the material and engage with their other group members. A lot of times we weren't able to cover the material in lecture before the students actually had to work with it for their certification responsibilities. But the students got very comfortable with jumping right into the lead documents, looking at exactly what was required, tracking down policies, figuring out where the information lay, and sending out emails. To prepare the students for the LEAD GA, we gave them weekly LEAD GA practice quizzes, if you will, on the material we had covered. So the students, at first, were kind of taken aback by this. Some of the questions they found kind of challenging, but in the end, the surveys indicated that they really felt themselves well prepared for the LEAD GA. And so with that, I'll turn this over to Mark. And Mark, you could talk a little bit about how things rolled out for you folks there. And I'll slide you down as the presenter.
All right. Thanks very much, Paul. And as Paul mentioned, he actually led off this effort as far as the first course in the spring of 2019. So we were able to learn a lot from his initial experience. He ran an experimental course, and my course was in the curriculum committee getting approved, and we were able to start in fall of 2019. And you can see here the building that we chose to focus our efforts on. This is Wildcat Fieldhouse, 95,000 square foot building for athletics, some offices, but also a large gathering space and a gym facility. And so we had ended up with 20 students in this course. We chose, as you can see in the upper right, LEAD V4.1, Existing Buildings Operations and Maintenance certification for this particular building. Just as a result here, you can see 12 of those 20 did end up passing the LEAD Green Associate exam. 2 more delayed their exam and are still in progress, about to take those any day now. And the great thing about the LEAD Green Associate is we are able to now take that remotely. The students are able to take it remotely in their homes or dorm rooms or wherever they are via remote proctoring. So that's a great addition that the USGBC education team has added. And we hope to hear more about that from them later. And you can see also 2 of my, I had 2 interns who helped with in the summer with some documentation, and they were able to study very hard and earn their LEAD AP in operations and maintenance. So we're doing both students based on their goals and based on their experience and what their comfort level is with the intensity of the study experience. They can choose either LEAD Green Associate or step it up to the basically second level LEAD accredited professional examinations. We give them that option. So LEAD version 4.1 actually addresses the green building operations and maintenance in a little bit of a different way. So we see several categories here: location, transportation at the top, sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, and over to the right-hand column, materials and resources, indoor environmental quality, and innovation points. So this might look familiar to some of you who have dealt with LEAD before. However, one of the unique aspects about 4.1 is the integration with ARC and the actual performance of these buildings. So we get a transportation performance score, water performance score, energy performance score, waste performance score, and indoor environmental quality performance score. All of those are effectively managed in the ARC system. And that's where this comes in, and that's why we're really excited to talk to you today about the ARC integration into our LEAD Lab courses. So, borrowed this graphic from the ARC team. They were able to track energy and water very easily, and most of you do this already in your utilities spreadsheets, some of which are in something like Energy Star Portfolio Manager. We have in New York State a thing called Energy Cap that tracks all of these things. Our Energy Manager, our facilities folks are really knee-deep in all the data, and they do analysis, but we can directly import that on the ARC platform. We can manually enter it month by month, or there's a spreadsheet that will automatically upload that. It's fairly straightforward. In addition, we're able to measure waste, transportation, and human experience to impact those LEAD scores. So for waste, we could choose either a waste audit, or there's some special ways of tracking waste with either manually entering some waste data that you get from your waste hauler company, or if you do it in-house, or even some innovative technology, something like sensing the roll-off containers that fill levels and such. We didn't go that route yet. We chose the more participatory route called a waste audit. I'll show you some photos of those later. Transportation and human experience are, both of those are, part of the scores for both of those are influenced by a survey that we give to both the regular building occupants as well as visitors to the building. And the other half of the human experience score is actually results of indoor air quality testing results. So we were able to purchase some equipment and have the students do some hands-on measurements with those pieces of equipment. And I'll take you right into ARC. Some of you may have used this before, but the really beneficial part of ARC is that you can see very clearly what's going on. So on our Wildcat Fieldhouse project, we could easily summarize our scores based on the performance in those 5 categories: energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience, in either a table view or in that graphic view that Gautami showed you at the very beginning. These are great ways to communicate not only to students, but even to the users of the building or even the general public. This is well easily understood, kind of like a ratio. You know, you can see how well in each category you're doing. And for example, for us, waste, we're getting 8 out of 8. So we're doing fantastic in the waste category, but maybe we have a little, could do a little bit better maybe in the energy category, where we're only scoring 28 out of 33. So we can see room for improvement. And that's the real power of tracking, monitoring, and assessing your performance, is that you can target the places where you need to improve. So to get set up in ARC is fairly straightforward. Setting up an account is free, and you can actually upload your data either, like I said, manually, or with the help of a template with spreadsheet template, basically. And to get started, to say which kind of data you want to enter, you would just go to this little gearbox in the meters and surveys tab, and what pops up is how to create a meter. So you literally name your meter. You can see on the left below my red circle, we have several meters that we have data for in that building. So there's a solar photovoltaic system embedded into the glass. You may have seen that in the first picture. We have natural gas that heats the building and provides hot water. We have electric, obviously, connects to the grid. We have a solar thermal that boosts warms up the boilers, so the natural gas doesn't have to heat them up as much. And those were all created by me, and it's very straightforward just to create those meters, and then you can start entering the data. The analysis that's done by ARC is fantastic, and really, again, focusing back to the LEAD system goals, one of the main areas is climate change. And so we're interested in our emissions. How well are we doing? How many metric tons of CO2 is our building emitting? So we can track that very easily based on an emissions factor that is standardized in ARC. And I would encourage you all to, if you do end up using ARC, check your emissions from your grid and make sure that it is entered correctly. So in New York State, we're very fortunate. We have a very clean energy grid. We don't have any coal being burned in the entire state anymore. And so our emissions factor is not 0.37 pounds per kilowatt hour. Instead, it's closer to 0.2 pounds per kilowatt hour. So that influences the output, obviously, of the emissions here. So for the field house, we can see our performance. Scope 1 is directly emitted by, let's say, our natural gas for heating and water heating at our building, and Scope 2 is grid purchased electricity in our case. And so we can see the accumulated greenhouse gas emissions from our building and how we're doing our performance. You can see a predictable ramp up during the winter months where we emphasized heating. And then anybody know what happened in March of 2020? Yeah, we had the pandemic shutdown. So we can see the direct impact of some aggressive energy conservation measures put in place by our energy manager to essentially shut down a lot of the systems and save energy, save money, of course. And here's the direct consequences is reducing emissions to very, very low levels. We would see some seasonal effects of this anyway, but you can see in March, that's probably we still have snow on the ground and we're heating quite a bit. And so that's definitely about half of what it should have been, and then dropped off to very low levels after that. Another powerful feature of ARC is that we can look at our emissions by source. So I mentioned we have natural gas as our fuel for heating. We can see that 99.95% of our emissions come from that natural gas, and very little of our emissions come from our electricity because our grid is so clean. Transportation, which would essentially be Scope 3, our building occupants traveling to and from the building and such, is based on our transportation performance score. I'll get into that in a minute. That's a minuscule amount of total emissions of our operations of this building. Okay, so a little bit of context then. We did the field house as our first project, learned a few lessons, and then wanted to attack another building with another semester. So what I did is over the summer entered in 12 additional campus buildings, so we utility data. So energy from electric and natural gas, as well as water consumption from the meters. You can have either sub-meters or just building level meters of each of those categories. ARC is very flexible and allows you to accumulate that data. So I went ahead and entered those data for the past 2 years, monthly utility data just from our spreadsheets that we have. And ARC was able to show us a preliminary score for those categories of energy and water. So this is, you can see down the right side, the preliminary scores of some of those buildings. This is actually a screenshot from just probably last week, so you can see some of the updated scores we have. Our library is that top one there that is a focus of our current course right now. And we're just entered the LEED Gold category. So once we get all the documentation squared away, we'll be in good shape for a LEED Gold certification of that building. And our field house was scoring at 79 just from ARC, and we can look at a couple additional LEED points that we can earn based on that scorecard, and we should be in the platinum category. We're very proud of that achievement. But ARC is so easy for us to just look and see how are the buildings performing. We wouldn't want to choose the campus center because it's performing poorly. We already knew it had some issues, but this guided us, and thanks again to the ARC team for helping us set up these building profiles. And then the users ourselves, we entered the data manually. Not too difficult at all. So like I mentioned, there's another course going on right now, fall 2020. And this has been a challenge for the requirements basically to teach remotely. So we have had 23 in-person meetings. Students are scattered all over upstate, and they have taken their time and their dedication to come to campus and do several in-person activities that are required. Most of the rest of the course can be taught remotely. The lectures are done online synchronously, so we meet together as a class every week, 2 times a week. I co-teach with a civil engineering professor. He takes Mondays, and I take the Wednesdays. And students get the experience of learning from both of us, and they get to some breakout groups and work in their teams together. So we're again using LEED version 4.1. We are applying this project to our library building, which you can see pictured there. The students on a tour being ferried into that, towards that library. And so for the library and the student participation, one of those meetings that the students did was a waste audit. So we directed our facilities staff, our custodian, to collect all of the trash and recyclables from the entire building for a 7-day period, September 8th to September 14th of this year. Then in collaboration with our local waste authority, we had a recycling coordinator who's helped us on past projects come over and get to participate with us and really lead the sorting effort. And so we were able to get some data from that. 23.5 pounds is all. You can see the library is not being used to a large extent. Our campus is operating mainly remotely, but there are dozens of users on any given day in this building. And so we're just not, and the staff is reduced, of course, too. We only have a few staff that are full-time in that building as currently. The rest are participating by remotely. And so we can easily enter this data right into ARC, and it gives us a waste performance score based on our waste generated, waste diverted, and those directly both impact the waste performance score. And I communicate this to my students. The way that the score works, the internal algorithm of ARC emphasizes waste reduction. In other words, reducing this large arrow waste generation is weighted higher than waste diversion. So we can recycle all we want, but reducing the overall waste burden is emphasized in ARC scoring. And so we can then influence that by our purchasing decisions. And our students are working on a sustainable purchasing policy that will both reduce usage, encourage purchasing recycled products, and so forth. So I just wanted to give you some inside scoop as to what these waste audits look like. We did one spring of 2019. We have Andrew, myself, Jamie, Dennis, John, Connor, and Marina participated in a waste audit of one of our campus buildings, multi-use offices and classrooms and offices, other offices in there. And then in upper right, we have fall of 2019. That's the field house. Tim, Sam, Dominic, Rob, Iqbal, Preet, John, and Zoe pictured here. The class was much larger, and they all participated in laying out some tarps and dumping out the trash onto those tarps and sorting through what might have been recyclable that should have gone into the recycling instead of in the trash, so we can calculate a rate of our potential for increased diversion. And in the bottom left, we have our group from the fall of 2020, the current course, Joshua, Mark, our custodian in the back there observing us, and Mackenzie, Abby, Jamie, Rita, Lexi, Colleen, and Dr. Lee there on the right. All of these lead to a report that chronicles our efforts, outlines the procedures of what we did, and produces some recommendations based on the data that's gathered. The actual numbers can be directly imported right into ARC to influence our waste performance score. Next, I wanted to talk to you about our transportation and indoor environmental quality human experience scores. So we have a survey that is sent out to the building occupants. This one is on a university campus. Most of you in the call, I believe, are on university campuses. For those of you who are not, and even some of you might be not aware that it's a little bit difficult process to do survey research on a university campus. So what we have to do is get approval, go through a process where our institutional review board verifies that data is secure, the participants won't undergo any undue stress and so forth. So we have to put out a very detailed informed consent statement. This is just a Google form. All we collect is their email address and their answers to a couple of questions saying, they're over 18 and that they agree to consent to the survey. Then it brings them directly to the ARC survey. Or the survey is actually administered in ARC, and it's just 2 questions. It's very straightforward, very simple, very quick, and so we can have we encourage participation in this survey from all of our building occupants, including the visitors. So we're trying to get a minimum of 25% participation in the survey in order to get a performance score in this transportation and human experience. So you can see just 2 questions. First question is about transportation. On a typical day, how do you get to and from the building? Enter the results for a one-day, one-way trip, essentially. So when you were to pull down this caret, if you select travel method, a pop-out menu comes up, and it'll give the participant of the survey some options. Did you walk, bike, telecommute, bus, light rail, rapid transit, motorcycle, scooter, car, solo, a carpool, or alternative fuel vehicle? And so what the participant would do, we would instruct them to write down your estimate of the number of miles traveled in each mode. And typically most commutes start and end with a walk, so there'd be some component of walk in there. And of course, walking doesn't emit any carbon dioxide, except that what you breathe, but we don't really count that as far as burning any energy and so forth. So we can see in the results that, again, we need over 25% for the number of occupants that we have. We were able to get 37.5% of our occupants to take the survey. And on the bottom of the screen, you can see results. Majority, over 80% of our occupants drive a car on their own to the campus and then walk a short distance to the building. And that's not too surprising. We are a majority commuter school. So there are, 4 dormitories now on campus serving, this semester is a little strange, but normally around 700 to 800 students. But we do have around 3,000 full-time equivalent students. So majority of our students are commuters, and the building would, the participants drive to the building. Either staff, faculty, or students are able to take this survey and show that, yep, they are all getting there in their car alone, which then can inform us how do we communicate better to these participants, greener ways of travel, in other words. Okay. The second part of the survey is a satisfaction with the indoor environment of the building. And so there's a slider. It starts off as neither satisfied or unsatisfied, and then you can slide it right or left. And there's 3 grades of satisfied. If you just go 1 grade over here, it's if you're just plain old satisfied, you'll get a mild smiley face, and if it goes up to very satisfied or extremely satisfied, the smiley face gets bigger. And then it just asks actually a supplementary question here. Select the options that significantly enhance your satisfaction of the building. So you can see some of the features there, or they can add their own comments in the blanks below. And so this informs us about what the people that are using the building like about the building. On the other hand, a frowny face for unsatisfied occupants. And so the question changes, the sub-question, number 3, select the options that reduce your satisfaction. So these are things that inform us and our facilities folks to say, what are the occupants experiencing? What do they not like about their experience in the building? Can we work to address those deficiencies, right? So we see very few of our occupants are unsatisfied, and that's a good thing, but we do want to address those dissatisfaction details, which are shown in the lower right of the screen here. So some of our occupants said that it was cold or dark or drafty or hot. I'm presuming that's different people saying cold and hot. And humid, a few people said loud, stuffy, and maybe lack of privacy. And these things can help us. Some things we could certainly work on as far as humidity levels and temperatures. We can increase comfort by adjusting the settings on the building management system. All right, and the other 50% of the human experience score is based on that survey. The other 50% is based on air quality measurements. So a lot of building management systems already take measurements of things like carbon dioxide that actually help to determine when the ventilation fans run and how much air quantity to pull into the building and so forth for achieving fresh air standards. We chose to buy some handheld monitors with the grant money that we had and give those students that experience of actually measuring it themselves, entering the data into ARC themselves, and getting that whole hands-on personal experience with that. And we can hear from the students later and see what their experience with that is. But on the whole, it's a positive experience. And so you can see the data that gets entered. You can enter any number of readings, but the score is based on the highest reading that you get. So there's an algorithm internal to that, but basically over 1,000 ppm is kind of our warning level, and we'd like to be under that level as far as our indoor air quality as far as CO2. For reference, background is around 415 ppm at this point, so to be at 520 at our maximum reading isn't too terrible at all. We are providing fresh air to the occupants of the building, and especially now during pandemic adjustments, we're providing even more fresh air. The other things that's required to be measured is total volatile organic compounds. You can see that on the red circle on the left. So that there's a number of different ways to measure that. We chose to pick a very high quality meter used in the oil and gas industry. It's this orange and black meter on the left there. It's from Ion Science. It's called Tiger. And this meter can detect down to the parts per million level of a ton of different constituents, and it has the ability to sum all of the volatile organics into a single number, and so you can either do concentration or a mass level of those in various units. It's a very powerful tool, and our students get to learn how to operate that tool, learn how to learn what the readings mean. We talk about this in the lecture, then they get to actually enter some of the data into the ARC platform. ARC also, LEAD rather, also provides the opportunity for innovation points for measuring additional constituents of the indoor air quality. So we chose to measure a specific constituent called acetaldehyde, and this is a byproduct of tobacco smoke, or it can be found in all kinds of other byproducts. So that would be something that we want to look for. And also we chose to measure particulate matter. This is a key constituent to occupant health and well-being. Particulates of 10 microns are typically measured as far as air quality standards, and in addition, we can do with this meter down to the particulate matter 2.5 microns, which can go deeper into the lungs and affect human health in lots of different ways, depending on what the particle is. There are some questions popping up, and we can address those later. I'd be happy to address those. Thank you. So we can get an additional 1 lead point for measuring 2 constituents of indoor air quality. And so we can do this ourselves. This is one of our goals of the project, is to enhance our in-house capabilities of measuring indoor air quality. So we have these units, the students can use them, and we can share these units among our partner campuses, and students all over the state would be able to benefit from our experiences here. Here we have part of our, we have Colleen and Rita taking some pitot tube readings as far as checking the flow in the actual equipment in the basement of the library here. So this is during our energy audit that we did just last week, actually. And so the students, as Paul was mentioning, get to crawl around in the spaces that most people never get to see. So behind the scenes, behind those locked doors, there's all the equipment that help keep the building comfortable and keep the building running in an optimal manner. And so our energy manager is on board with us, and he is able to work with the students, respond to emails, provide data to them, as well as be there in person to lead the energy audits. And Paul also has a similar situation on his campus, a very involved energy manager to help work with the students. And this is a challenge in itself, and we appreciate their efforts. They're not used to working with students. They're used to working behind the scenes, but they're willingly putting themselves out there on the line to enhance our student experiences, and we appreciate that very much. So at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Paul to tell you some more about his experiences with data and some different approaches that he's taken.
Thanks so much, Mark. So it really is a course that depends on having good relationships with all the stakeholders, and Mark just mentioned your energy manager, your facilities folks, your housekeeping folks. I was also very fortunate to be able to co-teach the course with a very intelligent and curious graduate student who decided that besides the lead online transportation survey, that we wanted to test or pilot a transportation survey app. So Beeline Analytics is a company that provides a GPS phone-based app that allows you to track a user's velocity and time history. And so you define the location of the building that you're interested in understanding the transportation characteristics to. And then the app will track the individual users as they arrive and leave from the building. And essentially, based on the velocity, the unique velocity profiles, it can distinguish driving in your private vehicle from taking public transportation. It'll separate bikes from skateboards, pedestrians from ripsticks. It essentially has learned through AI the profiles of what it looks like when people travel in different modes. So the survey that you saw Mark asked his building occupants to complete that indicated each of the different types of transportation modes and the distances that were traveled. This can all be handled automatically, and it can be done week after week. The result of that is that you end up with not only the information that you might want just to be able to work with the ARC platform, so you understand those transportation characteristics, but you also end up with a large data set that can provide things like, this is an example of a heat map, so you can see our campus at the lower left and our building basically in the center of that campus, and information is provided that might help understand where might campus shuttles be run most effectively, where might we like to add bike lanes or have on-campus transportation options for students to rent bicycles and things like that. So the ARC platform actually also integrates with these now. So along with the manual data input, there's a number of ways all of this can be automated, and there's some fascinating technologies that have been developed to do exactly that. So at this point, I'm going to shift, and this course was really about giving the students this experience. I'm going to run through just a quick summary of what the students in our course found as results from the experience, but I want to turn it over to some of the students themselves so they can share with you their individual viewpoints. So just quickly, what did the students think of this course? For the most part, they found it to be very different than any other college course that they had taken. And that was both essentially good and bad. They got a lot out of working with the data experience. They felt they were being handled as professionals. The students in general did very well on the LEAD GA. So the majority of the students who took the LEAD GA passed it. And they took a great deal of pride in earning a professional credential while they were still in college. Students were kind of unaware of the amount of potential policies and, if you will, bureaucracy that an institution operates within. And because of that, students wanted to get a lot of things done in a hurry, and that just didn't always happen because of the structure in place. So the students learned how to essentially help organizations change their behavior, not just individual behavior, but organizational behavior. So that was a big eye-opener. Project management skills. So students were very used to very linear assignments where they went through and filled out assignments that had them answered questions or filling in lines in a spreadsheet. They weren't used to trying to find out how they could improve the cooling tower water use by monitoring the cooling tower, and then finding out that the testing firm that provided those results in Syracuse actually worked with a lab in Boston, and the lab in Boston actually offers a monitoring system with a firm out of New York, and the firm out of New York that offers the monitoring system needs to integrate with the campus security system for their computers because it operates through the firewall that exists around the campus. So this is not the typical homework assignment, and students found this at times really invigorating and challenging. But again, at times they also found it somewhat difficult to deal with and exhausting. So students developed a different set of skills from the traditional ones. But overall, they developed a strong sense of how to work in a group. Students at the start of the semester had comments like, well, I don't like to work with freshmen. By the end of the semester, the students said things like, I know how to hold people accountable, and I know how to create structure in a group so that all my group members perform. So really, really valuable skills that will translate into success in their careers. So with that, I'm very pleased now to turn the presentation over to Angie Purcello. Angie is was a student who took some courses as electives at ESF in spring of 20. And one of the elective courses that she took was, in fact, this lead lab course. And Angie is going to share a little bit about what her experience was moving through that course with her own group. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Angie Purcello.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cravella. So I'm Angie, and I am a fairly new lead green associate, thanks to this class. And I'm actually studying civil engineering technology at Old Dominion University. However, last year I was living in Syracuse, New York, and I became very interested in the green building industry, in LEED specifically. And I was kind of seeking ways to get some experience in that field, which is what led me to take the CME 496 class, as well as several others as a visiting student at SUNY ESF last spring. So I'm really grateful to have found the CME 496 class because, as they've previously mentioned, it's extremely hands-on, and I feel like that's something that can be difficult to find in the green building industry as a student sometimes. So during the course, my group had the unique opportunity to complete our project with an organization located off campus. So we actually worked with a local nonprofit organization that was located in downtown Syracuse, New York. And this organization had previously earned the LEED BDNC certification in 2014. And then as of spring 2020, they were interested in pursuing LEED recertification, which follows the LEED O&M structure. And during our project, I served as the group's project and communications coordinator. So throughout the whole project, we used the ARC platform. It's actually one of the first things we set up was our USGBC credentials and our access to ARC. And we used that mostly to collect and input data for the organization in order to determine if they would be eligible for LEED recertification, and also to identify if there were any areas that they could improve before pursuing the certification. And as soon as we were able to access the ARC Score website, it was great because we could actually visualize the 5 categories that we always learn about in class. And not only could we see these categories, but I think more importantly, we could see what data we actually needed to collect for each category in order to determine the project's potential LEED score. So that was great because in the classroom, it can be theoretical at times. So by actually doing the project and identifying what data we needed when we visited the site and we're going through bills, it just made it a lot easier to know what we were looking at and kind of what data was the most important and critical throughout the process. So I specifically focused on the energy and water consumption categories throughout the project. So on this slide, you can see a screenshot of the different data that was necessary for those categories, or I'm sorry, for electricity specifically on this slide. And this made it really helpful because we had a giant pile of utility bills to go through, which was quite daunting at first. But by seeing this in ARC and knowing exactly what data we needed to pull from each of those energy bills, it made sorting through them a lot easier. So as we went through the bills, we just plugged in the data on the spreadsheet, and it wasn't daunting at all after we got through it. And then also previously mentioned was how visual the data could be interpreted by ARC. So after all of our energy and water consumption data was entered, ARC automatically created graphs to help us visualize the building and the the building score and kind of peak areas for the data usage. So seeing on this graph, it made it really easy to see that natural gas usage peaked in the winter months, which makes sense for somewhere like Syracuse, New York, where it's quite cold in the winter, and this was a natural gas heated building. But if this graph was consistent throughout the year and it was a natural gas heated building, it could have led us to identify maybe some areas for improvement because it should be peaking in the winter. So if you are using the same amount of heat in the winter and summer, you could see that maybe there is something wrong. And also here you can see another graph created in ARC which shows us the building's energy score and compared the energy used to both local and global averages. And this was helpful because it allowed us to learn about benchmarking and comparing our building to other buildings in the area, and we were able to discuss that in our final project report. Okay, so another super beneficial aspect of using ARC was helping prepare me for the LEED Green Associate exam. So one of the things that was regularly happening was learning LEED terminology throughout the course and throughout using ARC. And you really have to understand LEED terminology in order to use ARC sometimes. So for example, on here, you can see an area where we had to add occupancy in ARC in order for ARC to kind of review our data. So prior to this, I had never heard of regular building occupant data. I didn't know what regular building occupancy really meant. And in order to continue our project, I had to research what regular building occupancy data was, and I learned that it related to full-time equivalency, or FTE, which essentially means someone who works in the building about 8 hours a day. And then when I took the Green Associate exam recently, I remember very clearly there was a question specifically about FTE. And because of this project, I could easily recall what FTE meant and regular building occupancy, and I was able to answer the question like in a few seconds because it came to me so quickly because of my hands-on experience in this class. And that's just one example. I know going through the terminology helped me out a ton when taking the exam. So I really feel that in addition to the great hands-on experience, just working through ARC exposed me to a lot of terms and processes in LEED that I don't think I otherwise would have encountered had I just been studying from a textbook. And I honestly don't think that I would have scored so well on the LEED Green Associate exam had it not been going through this hands-on project and using the ARC system. So aside from passing the Green Associate exam by having access to and using ARC throughout, I know I'm also going to feel a lot more confident when I'm working on LEED projects in the future. Like Dr. Cravella mentioned, I feel a lot better working in teams, kind of figuring out what data we need and then how to split that up among different team members, how to coordinate within a group, and by working off campus, how to coordinate with external customers as well. That was really important for us. So I know I'm also going to be really comfortable when working with LEED recertification or operations and maintenance projects in the future, because that's something that I had no experience with before, but now I feel really good about it. So I'm very grateful for my time at ESF and for this class. And next, Mackenzie is going to speak about her experience at SUNY Poly.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Bradshaw. I'm the Materials and Resource Group Leader for the lead class at SUNY Poly. I'm currently a senior mechanical engineering major. My anticipated graduation date is in May 2021. And why I was interested in taking this course kind of relates back to my career interests of interning at National Grid for the past 2 summers. My first year in the gas department and the second year in electric material standards. So that kind of drove my thought into taking this course, which was originally supposed to be in class. So when I heard that it was going to be online, it was kind of overwhelming to think of that, but I think that it worked out really well being able to use ARC to input data and then being able to meet in class for our different audits that we performed. And I also was interested in the opportunity to take the lead GA exam to get these professional credentials while in college still. So what I have learned, we incorporated ARC into lectures, and also we got to use ARC throughout our teams to input the different data for the different categories. We participated in the waste audit, in which Professor Bremmer explained, and then I was part of the materials resource group, so that was the data that we were able to use to input into ARC, which will be later on in the slides. We also had energy data from our energy audit we performed last week, and then we used the handheld meters, like the Tiger that Professor Bremmer explained, and we were able to get that data too. And then also, I'll talk about preparing for the lead GA exam, which I'll take at the end of this class. So learning about ARC, we utilized this in class when Professor Bremmer did a virtual tour first so that we were more familiar with it and able to utilize it in our different groups for inputting data. And he showed us how ARC can be used for getting lead certifications, determining the readiness based off of our inputted data, where the project was located, in the different tools like the meters and surveys tab where we were able to input the data from our audits, where our project was located, how we were able to input the data, and how ARC scores the different categories and how the algorithm works. So after we performed the waste audit and we got the information back from Jamie, we were able to put this in, and this is a current picture of our performance score. We aren't done yet, but this was where we were at when we were working on the slides. So we're at 59, 1 point away from gold. So, and then you can see on the right side the different energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience current scores. And then on the bottom is more of like a visual interpretation of the scores and kind of shows you where we're at in the different categories. And I think sometimes it's easier to look at that image. Preparing for the lead GA exam, we utilized the core concepts guide, the USGBC, and the exam preparation guide. The core concept guides went into explaining green fundamentals and sustainable thinking strategies in the 7 main categories. And you can see down on the right side, the system goals is like reducing contribution to the global climate change, enhancing human health, to protect and restore water resources, protect and enhance biodiversity and ecosystem services, promote sustainable and regenerative material cycles, build a green economy, and enhance quality of life. So when we were in class, we were able to utilize these books more than just studying for the lead GA exam to kind of help us put together our different policies and different ways of improvements in our categories and things that could be used to get us a higher score, things to improve our building. And also the exam preparation guide also came with a virtual part of it where you're able to download an app on your phone. You can take quick quizzes, use flashcards in the practice exams. It helps you get more familiar with like key terms and keeping these things like fresh in your head. We were able to gain knowledge on key terms and definitions. The practice questions and tests were nice to take so you weren't just getting to the exam and you were more familiar with how, I haven't taken the exam yet, but I think it will better me in knowing how the questions are going to be worded, different questions that could be on the test, and kind of keeping my mind fresh for the exam. And how I'll apply this class to my future, the importance of tracking green building, I thought was already thinking of that before, considering the energy interests of my career. So it's definitely important to think about expanding green energy development, ensure that the building occupants are healthy and productive. This is especially something I think that's important to our project, considering that we are trying to certify the library, and lots of people use that space to be productive and get work done. So it's especially important that the human experience score is high in that category. And then reducing negative environmental effects, that's something that I feel like we should all work towards. So that was another thing that drew me to taking this class. And you can also see below that the materials and resource category. Those are the different things that me and my group had to complete, the different prerequisites of updating the purchasing policy, which Professor Bremmer talked about, the facilities maintenance and renovation policy, and then the waste performance score, which we will use that for the energy audit that we received from Jamie from the Waste Authority in Oneida County. Also, I think that this class helped me for project management because as the leader of the materials and resource group, it was my job to ensure that we completed the prerequisites for the categories above, and that I was the contact person for the materials resource group. So I was in contact with Professor Bremmer and in contact to get the waste audit from Jamie, so we were able to update ARC. And it was also my responsibility to input the waste data into ARC. I was glad that I got to take this class to get more knowledge on green building, as well as to enhance my leadership skills and my public speaking skills as being a panelist for you today. So thank you so much, and I'll pass it off to Professor Bremmer.
All right. Thank you so much, Mackenzie, and also thank you, Angie, for sharing your experiences as students in our respective courses. The panelists, the attendees really, I think, have got a really good, accurate picture of what you went through, and I'm sure they'll have some questions for you in addition to what you've already provided to them. So just to kind of wrap up, I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of kind of the third goal that we're trying to achieve and what we're doing here. Obviously this ARC webinar is part of our outreach, sharing our learning experiences and our best practices with everyone else who might be interested. So we have some documents that are on the website. Again, it's sunypoly.edu/GBELC, stands for Green Building Experiential Learning Collaborative. You'll see some lessons learned, some best practices, some of which we talked about here today, but there's many others as far as setting up a course, going through curriculum committee, going through the IRB, all kinds of just details about how we did what we did. And we'd be happy to discuss those details with any of you separately, so feel free to contact us. Our contact information is on the website there as well. And just kind of thinking about the future, what we want to do with this project to continue it, to increase its impact perhaps. The fourth dot down here, we'd really like to see some kind of, and we've been working to figure out how this is going to work, but either a minor, a certificate, or a micro-credential, a badge, something that can be, that the students could take several of our courses, and these are courses taught at the several different campuses, so it would have to be an intercampus kind of a thing. And we're still working towards that. We still have a couple of years left in the grant to kind of finish up and solidify those plans. We also kind of are recognizing the importance of monitoring the performance of our buildings, and we're looking to both expand the use of those indoor air quality tools, use them as teaching tools. We're going to open those up to other SUNY campuses as well as other professors in other departments. So maybe a chemistry class might want to use something like that. So once you get the devices, it's really useful to be able to share and educate others about how they work and what kind of great data and even other research that can be done. I've worked with a couple other faculty members, and their requirements for their research influenced my purchase decisions on which meters to buy. And there's also all kinds of new technologies that are coming out where we could look to automate our building performance. There's benefits and drawbacks to doing that, right? So that the students have a really good time getting the hands-on experience with the meters and doing the waste audits and doing the energy audits, but there are opportunities for those facility managers out there that want to just use ARC and track the performance and in an automated way, and that is a real power, a real potential for this platform. They've already integrated with a number of different partners to provide those services. And just wanted to mention that we have licensed all of the materials that we've created for this course to the Creative Commons. So these are accessible to use by anyone. If for any purpose, you just need to attribute the source. All right, I just wanted to acknowledge the SUNY Performance Improvement Fund for providing us the resources to conduct this kind of research. Also, you can see the names of our various colleagues at our 3 partner institutions who did a phenomenal job and just tons of work, tons of great efforts that are put into the various efforts that we're doing, the courses that we're teaching, and even in the handling student questions, in the background and things along those lines. So we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this point. And thank you very much again for letting us share what we've learned for the Green Building Experiential Learning Collaborative. Appreciate it.
It's great. Thank you so much, Mark, Dr. Paul, Mackenzie, and Angie. I'm sure you're hearing a thunderous response through the virtual world of the web. And if you were sitting in person, I'm assured that there would be so many questions on a line outside the door.